So Tina, I have I'd like to ask you a few questions. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have you.
For
Yeah,
having me. It was awesome. Appreciate
it- it's my pleasure. As we said at the beginning of this, I really do think of you as the thought leader in mastermind community groups. And I wanted to ask you, you're an innovator. You're an innovator in the space, a way to run groups. What role does innovation play in your go-to-market strategy?
it. So it's one of the reasons you and I have partnered together, by the way, obviously. Um, but innovation is an LX Council core value and behavior because we found, much like I believe everybody on this call, that if you aren't constantly challenging your clients, right, to the next level, so i.e. innovate, then it's hard to retain them and it's hard to have them be the best they can be, obviously. So every year we come to the end of the year and think about what are we going to do differently next year? So what do we need to innovate? And it falls into that category, which is one of the things that brought me to you, because that was a big question a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we have adopted what we call, a lot of times people talk about what's best practice for this and best practice for that. Well, our philosophy has shifted in that it's really what is the better practice today, because it's constantly changing. So the world is changing, right? Rapidly, innovating rapidly. We have to do that. If we don't do that, the client gets ahead of us and then we become a little irrelevant. And so the goal is not to be irrelevant. And so we're constantly looking how to better practices and we never end up at a best practice, right? So
Yep.
a lot of listening, a lot of observing.
Yeah, that's funny. I couldn't agree with you more. Always evolving forward. Yeah, and I've witnessed that. So through the business we do together, I've witnessed that firsthand, and I absolutely love it. So your model is different than a lot of other peer group models. And one of the things that attracted us to working with you is your strategic partner and licensed group leader model. Can you explain that for a second? Then we'll talk about how data works with strategic partners and group leaders.
Sure. So prevailing issue in this space is the failure to launch groups.
Mm-hmm.
Couple that with, over the years, like in 2005, I was just talking about this earlier today with somebody. In 2005, when I launched my very first peer groups, I did the old school direct mail, cold call, get people in. That was extremely expensive. And then as years went on, as we've all seen, everything has become more personalized, very relationship driven. People do research on you way before they do business with you and all of those things, right? You put all those in a bucket that, I came from a history in corporate life of partnerships, and that having partnerships is a lot easier, smarter, more fun way to work. And it gives you a lot more leverage of 1 + 1 is not 2, it's some other multiplier, right? So this concept is that, and that we have all of our licensed partners find right fit strategic partners that where they share the common same client in order to leverage the relationship to create the groups together, because there's a lot of benefits for the strategic partner to do that, deeper relationships, growth of, and you've talked about this, you've written about it, about additional business development, new engagements, more advisory services and all of that for that function. And so that's what we've done. It's all about working smarter.
Yeah. And can you share a couple of examples of what a strategic partner would look like?
Yes. And it's constantly growing, by the way.
It is.
So, it's been traditionally financial institutions, so like banking, accounting firms, law firms, insurance companies, but is growing now into, with our licensed partners being innovative, private equity firms. Or I just got off a call with a concept of a workspace situation, and it's really anyone who has a recurring relationship with the type of client you want to put a peer group with. And so now it's opened it up to like lots of different types of organizations.
Yeah. And so, yeah, because CoreValue is actually a strategic partner as well. It's interesting. So what attracted us is the ability to create an affinity group for customers that help them get the value they need that might go beyond the walls or beyond the boundaries of what we provide as a service. So if we look at a bank, they want to ultimately help their clients be healthier businesses, right? Well, that's not simply with banking. And has that been your experience?
Yes. Yes. And, part of originally the reason of strategic partners was to help the actual member participating have a better relationship with them.
Yep.
So, because typically the traditional CEO running a business would keep their banker at arm's length and their accountant, I only want you at tax time. And then heaven forbid the lawyer, I'm never calling because they're going to charge me too much money and I'll be in trouble first,
Yep.
So we recognize as businesses grow, they needed to have proactively those great relationships. And quick sidebar, yesterday I had a conversation with a competitor who told me that during, and it's a national global competitor, that their organization lost 20 some odd % of their members when COVID hit because they couldn't survive. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And LX Council licensed partners lost no members, 0, because they all had these good advisor relationships that they could count on. And so they all got their PPP loans and stuff. And this competitor's members didn't. And they lost out on all of that. So that's a big reason why having, the strategic alliance partner concept is for.
Yeah. It's very powerful. And, you made the point earlier, you're batting 1,000 on launching groups. So that's terrific. It's not going to surprise anyone that I asked this, but Tina, why did you decide to integrate CoreValue into LX Council?
Well, I love this. I love
softball.
Oh no, but I love answering this because there's a little bit of competitive nature with me. And so where this comes into play with you, as you know, is, but everybody else probably doesn't know. So here we come up on a year. What are we going to do to help our members, help our licensed partners be more successful? What's going to be new? What's going to be innovative? And I have looked at your competitors, obviously, and nothing was just really dazzling, like, it's kind of okay. Because what drove me crazy in this space is that some people would claim, by being a member of their organization, their business owners were blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, how do they know that? Like, what real data do they have? And is it anecdotal? And I'm like, I want real data. I want concrete that says, this is what happened. And more importantly, less about really what happens in LX Council Group, but just obviously a resource so that our members could know they were making progress and that it wasn't how they felt about it. So we also, at the same time, it's also challenging sometimes to have CEOs really bring to the table the real, true issues they should be talking about.
Yeah, so true.
They have blind spots, and so they sometimes don't even know. So you take that all into consideration to when I got introduced to you, thankfully, and knowingly that you had gone to a competitor and they were thankfully stupid enough to not do a deal with you, that opened up the opportunity that we could work together. So it has been coming up on our first year, and the data that you showed has just been amazing. But that is why really ultimately we wanted something concrete and measurable. And it has turned out to be more than that, by the way. And what I mean by more than that is not only is it helpful to showcase to the actual member participating in the group what their key things they should do. I always equate it to, I'm going to sell my house and should I upgrade the bathroom, the kitchen, the outdoor space? What's going to bring in most value? It's the same thing in the business, but it enables those that are running the groups to actually be sure the right topics are discussed at the same time.
Yep. So. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's fun. And It's fun. Thanks. All right. So I think the next question I'd like to tackle is, how will you be using the CoreValue data? How do you see this data? You and I have talked about it at a high level, and we've, obviously presented it to your community, but how are you planning on using it with CEO and business owner clients?
Right.
I'll leave the question there. Yeah.
Well, I think you brought out some of that in what you talked about earlier. So how we see this is, first and foremost, if you think about it from our licensed partner perspective, those trying to put groups together, this is a great marketing tool. This is what will happen, right, when you're involved in a group for all these reasons. When you're looking for bringing on the right strategic partners, this is great for them. Same kind of, it will help recruiting from that standpoint and also retaining those relationships.
Mhm.
But for the actual person in the group that actually does the report, benchmarking that their return on investment in a very concrete way. So based on what you're able to do, it can slice and dice it. You talked about, like, for somebody's, whole client base, and what could you see out of that with different types of your clients, or maybe different size of your clients, or maybe does geography play a role in that? And that's what we're going to be able to use it for, is how much does geography or the length of how long somebody's been involved in a group, or do some groups kind of have higher performing members than other groups. But it will bring out, like, to your point, roundtable discussion topics, speaker topics, content topics, just a wealth to be more strategic in running the group than ever before. And even possibly more strategic on what the next right fit member just put in a slot that you might have open.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for everyone who's joined us, the Tina is deploying, LX Council has deployed Discover with all of their members a year ago. We're getting ready to have each of those businesses go through Discover again. So now we're going to look at progress in those businesses and sharpen our focus, and think about doing this 1 year, 2 years, 3 years with cohorts of clients, and the impact that data is going to have. And it's going to be terrific. And it really is focusing. It's like, okay, here's where we're doing well. And as one of my mentors used to say, there's no good news or bad news. There's only data. So if you have businesses that aren't moving the needle, it allows us to start shining. It would allow you to start shining some light. I say us because we have a lot of customers who are doing some variation on this as well.